You are listening to the Push Media Podcast Network.
This is good shit.
I would like to start with talking about a shared experience that I am fairly confident all of us had happened to us at some point during this past week. At some point during the past 7 days. And, big qualifier here, you're not a complete total dork weirdo loser with no friends. If you're not that, I'm fairly confident, I'm willing to bet at some point your group chat was hit with a video out of the blue of, how do I put this? Former NFL wide receiver Antonio Brown smacking a stranger with his dick in a public pool in the United Arab Emirates? I guess that might be the most apt way to describe what all of us undoubtedly watched at some point during the last 7 days. Out of the blue, whatever task you were doing was interrupted by a video of what did I just watch? What is going on? I mean, like, man, what? And shout out TMZ for not even kind of making an effort to blur that. Yeah, I mean, like, my God. And wide receivers, you know, they're divas. Their antics are supposed to be a lot. That's an archetype in sports. I don't know how popular it is really anymore, but every type of fan loves watching an athlete do something reckless. It's the best type of story. More than an actor, more than you know any other type of public figure or celebrity, nothing beats an athlete doing something crazy. Probably because, you know, if you want to admit it publicly or not, you know deep down, ooh, this train has the potential to make the most of a mess because an athlete is the peak strength and physical specimen with the brain of someone who's devoted their entire life to two shapes, pretty much, X and O. They are not Rhodes Scholars, but they are literally the apex as to what a human could do. And while, you know, watching monster truck rallies and just general chaos and things colliding can be entertaining, it can be fun to rubberneck, it seems like it's taken a dark turn, specifically with football players. Specifically thanks to a movie featuring Will Smith with a shoddy at best intermittent Nigerian accent. Tell the truth. I'm sorry, I am. But, you know, Will should be too. It seems like now, like anytime there's a story where NFL players get in some type of controversy, they do something reckless, there's like this dark cloud casted over it now. You can't just like, gone are the days of laughing off Ray Rice having a disagreement in an elevator. Gone are the days of, you know, Brett Favre accidentally sending off a dick pic to literal sideline reporter Aaron Andrews. Because now there's this cloud of like, unfortunately, we've discovered repeated head trauma pretty much professionally 8 hours a day for a decade plus, depending on when you started playing, might lead to impaired cognitive function. So it's funny. Yeah, it's definitely funny. And well, actually, it's not funny because what Antonio Brown did was sexual assault in an Arab country, which, okay, I mean, and you know what's important here is I forgot to tell everyone, Antonio Brown released a statement after the video went around the internet featuring himself smacking a stranger with his penis in a public pool in an Arab country, which is known for stoning people. He took to Twitter, and Antonio Brown took to Twitter to say, it's crazy to me that even after I retire, there is disinformation coming out about me. He followed that up with another tweet saying, quote, ironically, during a time when the NFL is getting heat for allowing players to play when they're clearly concussed, they're using black men as guinea pigs. End quote. Now, what's hilarious is Antonio Brown has a point. There's been a lot of news all of a sudden with quarterbacks specifically. And that's only because now people care if it's the quarterback of the team, I guess. But there's been a lot of news, like the Miami Dolphins quarterback who was cleared to play when he clearly didn't know what game he was playing after he was hit that hard. That doctor went on to lose his job. Then it comes out Joe Burrow has experiences of his own where he clearly shouldn't have been playing, was concussed as a motherfucker, but was cleared and allowed to go out and keep doing so. Now, the difference now, we were led to believe, if we are to literally, watch the commercials that now play during games, the NFL has partnered with people who wear lab coats to make the best helmets. We're calling flags and penalties a lot more now. We've changed the game. We've all seen the Will Smith movie. We've all pretended the accent was Academy Award nomination worthy, when in fact we all know it wasn't. We have made strides and changes to prevent players from showing up in parking lots with loaded guns, to prevent retired football players from donating their brain to science whilst still alive. We have heard your concerns, and we have changed them, except for the two very high-profile incidents that have just happened recently. And the idea that just maybe a wide receiver who has decided to smack a stranger with his dick in a public pool in an Arab country, caught on camera doing so, circulated and verified across the internet, released a statement saying the disinformation about me is just getting out of hand. And by the way, NFL is not really doing much to help players with concussions. And I think, just hear me out, it's much more likely that if you made the choice to assault a stranger with your penis in an Arab country that might not let you leave, your cognitive function is impaired. I think it's more likely your brain ain't working real good no more, probably from getting hit professionally for most of your life. I think that's probably more likely than you're not good for the locker room. You bring a bad energy to the team, you're a diva, you're a selfish player. It could also be, and just hear me out, if you saw the video, like I said, if you're not a dork, weirdo loser who doesn't have friends, if you watched that video, you did a double take. You were like, what am I looking at? Because this is ridiculous. And to top it all off, I don't think a lot of people realize it was in the United Arab Emirates, which leads me to believe it is much more likely that you, Antonio Brown, a man known as a bit rambunctious, who has a proclivity for smacking strangers with his penis, I think your brain ain't really doing you any favors if you think it's a bright idea to go vacation in the capital of the Muslim world. They might not let you leave. They throw rocks at people till they die for crimes still. More likely, your brain's not working. You know what I mean? More likely, something ain't firing correctly. So at first, the video was probably kind of funny. You were like, what? Is that Antonio Brown's dick in a pool? And then you were like, whoa, this is not funny anymore. This is sexual assault. And then you were like, why did this end up on the internet? What friend of his put that on the internet thinking this was a good idea? And then if you did an additional bit of research and found Antonio Brown's statement where he said, the disinformation about me is crazy, and then just put the heat back on the NFL for allowing players to keep getting concussed. I mean, this is quite a development. It's all fun and games until someone decides to donate their brain to science with a shotgun. You know what I mean? Things end badly. People love to watch train wrecks. It's what it is. It's not diva behavior. It's not just, the types of fodder that we like to see athletes do. We like to see the gusty, bravado type of nonsense stuff. This is much darker than that. And by darker, I mean the content, not, the color of the subject in discussion here. It can get dark real fast, because if you watch that video, what you did see and what you know is Antonio Brown is a man who literally does not know, what is proper decision-making in society anymore. He thought it was a good idea to do that also in a Muslim country, might I stress. I mean, he literally stayed in a hotel that had a dress code. You know what I mean? It's one of those places. Your brain is not working. and I hope it gets corrected before you end up making an appointment for your brain while your body stays in a different place. Keeping in line with stories that are funny at first, and then upon second thought, give you a sinking feeling that, boy, that is not good. Arnold Schwarzenegger recently visited Auschwitz, which is, that's a sentence. That's something I said. That's something you now know. Arnold Schwarzenegger was recently in Auschwitz. And the reason I'm going to tell you why he was there is because he signed the guest book, because he's not better than anybody else. If you go, you can sign the guest book of people who have toured it. So Arnold Schwarzenegger, who had recently just concluded a tour of Auschwitz, Nazi death camp, numero uno, Treblinka can suck a dick. He signed, Arnold Schwarzenegger, that is, the guest book as the Terminator. I'll be back to Auschwitz. To Auschwitz. Listen, Gov. Time and a place. Am I wrong here? Read the room a little. Who was that joke even for? Who did you think? And again, you look like a supervillain. You're literally known for being like this half villain, half robot thing that just destroys stuff in every representation, or partnered up with Danny DeVito, and you're fucking Austrian, homie. You don't think maybe don't crack a joke at Auschwitz? You don't think maybe writing a little limerick in the guest book as a former governor representing America at the death camp the Nazis preferred the most is an appropriate place to crack a wise funny? Arnold ain't a good look. And Arnold has been, he's had some decisions become public and questioned thereof, like the bastard love child he had with the cleaning lady. Could you be more of a cliche? But Arnold, my God, that one's funny because I don't think he can, blame concussions or repeated head trauma. I just think maybe, I don't know how to explain that one away. I have made many jokes or even attempts at jokes at times when I really shouldn't. I have a difficult time knowing when to turn it off most of the time, as does some other podcasters who've recently lost their producers. But I could tell you this about myself, what I know thoroughly to be the truth. I don't think I would try and crack a joke at Auschwitz. That's just me. I thought that was funny, and I thought I would share. Arnold Schwarzenegger visits Auschwitz and signs in the book, The Terminator, I'll be back. Why are you coming back, Arnold? Do you have plans? Do you have plans for expansions? Do you have any suggestions as to how they could improve the tour? You think things can't get dumber, and then there's literally a Terminator reference at Auschwitz made by a former governor who is Austrian. But there's also some people in the public light, some pop culture figures who have been labeled dumb before, intermittently throughout their career, but I maintain are, still kind of genius. And I'm talking about Kanye West. Hit the yay button. White lives matter. Now, I'm sure you're thinking, Colin, please continue talking about race. This should be good. I will. Thank you very much. Kanye's catching a little bit of heat for wearing White Lives Matter shirts. And people are like, this is not good. You are betraying the community. How could you possibly wear a White Lives Matter shirt? What are you doing? How are you selling out your people? How could you, Kanye West, wear a White Lives Matter shirt? And Kanye simply responded with, well, don't they? Genius. The man still has flashes of it in him. He's intelligent, because I think what he's doing, and I personally think I'm unhinged enough to probably follow his train of thought, but what I think he's trying to do is satirize the whole problem with Black Lives Matter, the organization, and Black Lives Matter, the general belief that they do. Because there's a difference between the organization of Black Lives Matter and the thought. One has a 503c filed and is tax exempt from the government, and is led by two lesbians who keep siphoning money off of people and buying houses only to have them foreclosed and seized on. And the fact that they're lesbians don't have anything to do with the type of people they are, but it is a stereotype I'm trying to get started. Lesbians commit real estate white-collar crime. I'm trying to start that stereotype because, I don't know, it's kind of, it's funny. It might be. And it might even be true, to be honest. In fact, it is, at least right now. And then there's Black Lives Matter, the belief that they do. And the issue, or really the solution that the organization saw, was if we name ourselves an idea that is just true, obviously, it is so true, it really doesn't need to be stated. It's so fundamentally accurate and socially kind of like checkmate. You can't really disagree, because then at that point, what are you arguing for, a race war? The geniusness of labeling the organization, that is, you then can't disagree with the organization. Plus, they can then kind of control the narrative as to what the belief is. I think, and I might be, very much highfalutin in my mind with this and completely off base, but I don't care. And neither does Kanye. But what I think he's doing is highlighting that that's word magic. What you're doing is manipulating and tricking people. And what you should always remember is that, manipulating people with words and slogans is one of the most effective ways to do it, because obviously that's how we communicate. But when that happens, there is always an antidote. There's a way to fight back against it because they are words. You could just take the same words, put them in a slightly different order, and push the point back in someone's face, which is the most frustrating and successful way to effectively make your point. And most importantly, when doing that, try not to even have a point. Just try to be pissing people off because someone has to do that. You gotta hold them on the bag. Keep them honest. Because as you know, lesbians are known to commit white-collar crime. But what Kanye's doing by wearing the White Lives Matter shirt, anyone who says, people like, Ava DuVernay, or the guy who claims to work at Temple, but he's always on NBC News, Lamont something, all of these people who are like, you are selling out the community. How could you possibly do this? How could you wear a White Lives Matter shirt? Kanye's response of, well, don't they? Immediately is genius, because then what are they supposed to say? No. Or yes. And if you don't think any type of life doesn't matter, you're a piece of shit. Newsflash. You see? Two can play at this game. And then, and Kanye does things not necessarily in the most diplomatic way, not with the greatest and graceful of bedside manners, but he made a good point, a valid point. And as a black man, I think it's worth saying that any white person who immediately doesn't take, the Reverend Al Sharpton high road to say you are selling out a community, any white person, any white journalist who didn't ask Kanye, what's up with the shirt? For fear of, questioning a black person and Black Lives Matter, that's actually racist. Kanye ain't necessarily the smoothest guy to make a point, but he has points. We still have an amendment that technically allows slavery. It's the 13th Amendment. Kanye's hip to it, and he's talked about it. He might be insane. In fact, he's insane, but there are moments of genius in there. But there are people also who rode the wave of what Kanye was doing and executed it in a much more successful and effective way, like the homie Neil deGrasse Tyson. Now, before I continue to leap praise onto him, it is worth pointing out that Neil deGrasse Tyson dresses like the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain or a magician on a job interview. But he's a smart dude. He a clever cookie. You know what I'm saying? He tweeted after the Kanye West news about Kanye claiming everyone with life is important. Neil deGrasse Tyson tweeted a picture of the Avatar things, the blue people or whatever. And let me just offer a brief detour. Who gives a fuck about Avatar? The first Avatar sucked. I hate to break it to everyone. It wasn't that impressive. The story was literally Pocahontas. And it was just like a theme park. Like, what blows your mind to the point where you're like, I can't wait for the sequel 16 years later? I was in 8th fucking grade when the first Avatar came out, and I wasn't impressed. Take that, James Cameron. But anyway, Neil deGrasse Tyson tweeted the blue fucking people from Avatar, and the caption saying, "Blue Lives Matter." You fucking sly, wise guy. Neil deGrasse Tyson tweeted Blue Lives Matter right after Kanye said White Lives Matter. Neil deGrasse Tyson attached it to a picture of the blue monkey things from Avatar. What do you mean I'm talking about cops? I would argue it's more likely what Neil's doing as a scientist and man who literally studies how things work in reality. I would argue it's pretty likely that what he was doing was highlighting just how ridiculous it is and nonsensical it is when very complex and nuanced conversations are reduced to slogans. You use this word magic, word salad to manipulate people. When you put out these phrases and you even name organizations after phrases that socially can't be questioned. which A, is not a real thing, anything can be, but B, a manipulation. It's not, it's disingenuous. What is being done is not fair. It feels not within the bounds of good taste. And I think that's what Neil's highlighting. Blue Lives Matter, says Black Neil deGrasse Tyson, not long after Kanye West said White Lives Matter. And what's more likely? Do you honestly think when Kanye West says White Lives Matter that he has the same set of beliefs as the people saying White Lives Matter that show up with tiki torches? No, you don't. You don't really think Kanye thinks that. What's much more likely is that he's trying to prove you the point that what you're doing with these reductionist slogans is cheap wizardry at the very best. And ironically enough, the most famous black scientist who already dresses like a magician on a cruise ship, Neil deGrasse Tyson, just so goddamn cleverly says, oh, by the way, Blue Lives Matter. I didn't know you were talking about cops. I was talking about Avatar. I'm a nerd. Bravo. Well executed. Hold people to their shit. Words are very important, and they're also not at all. Duality, lil bitch. Words are very important. When put together and assembled in the right collection and order, you can create countries, move buildings, people, organize thoughts. Literally anything could happen if you organize the right collection of words together, pretty much. But at the same time, words are just words. They are just vibrations of sound that mean literally nothing. They are, and honestly, who is to even say our words mean what we say they mean? You know what I mean? Why do we say blue is blue? It's just a noise my mouth makes that you recognize with two of the holes in your head. Doesn't necessarily mean it's blue. So stop letting words be this be-all, end-all. Don't use them as this thing where you make statements that then can't be argued or discussed anymore. Words can't also be trump cards because they're not guns. Words are not, something that immediately ends a discussion. They're actually used as tools to have them. They're not weapons. So words don't mean anything, but they also can do everything. And I think that's what Kanye was trying to point out by wearing a White Lives Matter t-shirt. I think that's what Neil deGrasse Tyson was trying to say when he said Blue Lives Matter. Can't wait to see Avatar 2 16 years later. Fucking nerds. And if any part of me talking about White Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter rubbed you the wrong way, and I don't see why it would. I mean, that's a completely, neutral topic that doesn't really inflame sides either way, one way or another. If, by some chance, you were kind of ticked off by what I said, I would at least like to point out that I didn't go to Auschwitz and make a Terminator joke.